welcome back to my channel. In today's video I will be showing you and explaining to you how to convert a road bike to disc brakes. And now this only refers to the front of the bike because the rear is a standard road geometry and it does not have the mounts for the disc brakes, so you cannot put a rear disc brake on it without some modifications, which I don't want to do to the carbon frame. I've already done this before with my recumbent here. There's a front disc brake. It used to be just standard rim calipers, so I'll be explaining to you some of the learning lessons that I've encountered while converting from a front standard road calipers to a disc brake. Alright, here's a look at a lot of the components required and some of the recommended safety equipment that you should be using if you want to convert your front brake to disc brakes. Let's go start off with the fork here. I went ahead and got a fork that's 1 1/8 on the top and 1 1/4 on the bottom. I went with Shimano Ultegra disc brake rotor. For the wheel, I did buy a light Bicycle tubeless compatible rim and built up this wheel with a hope hub in the middle. On the right side, you can see I went with a TRP Spyre brake caliper. I also purchased a Cane Creek S110 crown race. That's going to go between the fork and the headset over here. I also have some safety glasses, goggles if necessary, brake cable, top cap, extra headset spacers, a lot of brake cable, and some gloves. Also, if I'm going to be cutting the steer tube, I went ahead and got a respirator, and I'll be cutting it outside. So the top part of the fork is 1 1/8, and there's 25.4 millimeters in 1 inch. So 1 1/8 times the 1 inch comes out to 28.575 millimeters for the top. So the top's supposed to be 28.575, and this fork is 28.79. 28.72, so just a little thicker than the 28.575. The next measurement here is the lower, so we have 1 inch, which is 25.4 millimeters times 1 1/4 inches, and that should be 31.75 millimeters for the diameter of the lower part of the fork. So measuring the lower part here, you can see that it's about 33.2 millimeters across, and that seems to be significantly larger than the 31.75. So I was a little concerned there, but fortunately my other fork on the BMC is also about 33 millimeters across, so even though it's supposed to be 1 1/4, which is 31.75 millimeters, this extra about 1.5 millimeters wide, it should still fit. The next thing you want to make sure fits is the crown race, so I'm going to go ahead and open up this Cane Creek crown race and see if this and the dimensions would fit onto the fork that I just purchased. So the inside of this fork comes out to about 32.65. However, the fork bottom was 33.2, which is an additional millimeter wider. So I'll see if this crown race fits. If it does not, I still have a crown race I could pull off the BMC fork and put onto the new fork. So initially it looks like it's not really fitting the crown race over the fork here. And I'm pushing down pretty good, and it's real tight. So here's the crown race that I just bought, the Cane Creek S110 1 1/4 crown race, and it is for a 47/33 sizing, and it said it should work for a 1 1/4 alloy crown race, but mine, I guess it's alloy, but I have a carbon fiber fork. It also says the crown race seat diameter is 33 millimeters. I'll show you with the bag. And here's the bag where it says 47/33 millimeters. So it's kind of odd that this thing doesn't fit. Maybe you just have to put some grease on it and just press it on real tight. So I'll figure out what to do with that crown race in just a little bit. In the meantime, let's go ahead and measure the steer tube length currently on my bike. So this is 22 centimeters or 220 millimeters, and I'm going to add a little bit, make it a little bit longer so I could have space if I want my stem to be more flat. And so I'm going to add about 20 to 30 millimeters to make it about 245 to 250 millimeter long steer tube. So I have my steer tube here. I'm going to measure out 245 millimeters, and wherever that lines up, let's see, about right here, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of tape around there so I can go ahead and make a cut with the tape around it. So wrap some tape around here, measure it up again for your length. It looks like it comes out to be a little tricky here. Right there. Now to get that cut straight, you're going to have to first mark out and get it 90 degrees with a good angle. And you want to turn the fork around so it's perpendicular and you have a nice guide line. Alright, so I marked the line, and I marked the line all the way around the fork. So now would be the time to go ahead and make the cut. So this is where the saw, safety goggles, and gloves come in. I'm going to go ahead and make this cut outside. Oh, and also don't forget the respirator, just to be safe. Alright, I got all my safety equipment on, and now I'm going to try to make this cut. Line it up and be very careful. It looks like it's cutting pretty easily so far. I'm just doing real light back and forth cuts and making sure that the saw is very vertical, up and down. As I start to make the cuts, take a look. There's a bunch of little fibers here, so it's a real good thing that I'm wearing the respirator, because I'm not sure if these fibers can cause cancer or not. So this next part's probably going to be a little slow going, so feel free to fast forward, skip ahead if you want to. Just want to mention that all of this equipment that I'm purchasing is just on my own, and I'm not sponsored by anyone. And I'll continue cutting. So I'm about halfway through the cut now, still continuing forward. And yep, you can still see all the fibers. Apologize for the noise. It's the respirator on. So I'm reaching near the end of the cut, and I'm going to just show the last bit of this cut on the video to see if it goes all the way through, and if there's any fiber sticking out. Almost there. Alright, so a little part sticking out as I finish off the cut. I don't want there to be any fraying, so I'm going to go cut hopefully a little bit more. Just go take a look at that cut now. So this definitely isn't the best cut. I mean, it's a little off, but there weren't any big splintering or major issues with this cut. It took about, my guess is about 5 for this cut to go through with a standard hacksaw. Alright, so now it's back to the crown race and to see if it's going to fit over on the fork. So I have my Shimano grease here, and what I'm going to do is apply a thin layer of grease around the bottom and the sides of this fork to see if it could slide on a little easier. And then I will use a mallet and just a standard screwdriver because I don't have an actual over 1 1/4, but do this only at your own risk because I don't think this is the recommended way of installing the crown race. Let's take a look at this again. So I apply the Shimano grease here, and I'll go ahead and tap down on it to see if I could get it in. Alright, again, do this only at your own risk. Here, tap a little bit downward. And I'll work on this and see if it's going to work or not. I'm not really sure. Alright, so unfortunately that crown race was not going onto that fork easily, so I'm going to take the fork from this BMC off, and I'm going to go ahead and see if this fork, crown race, will fit onto the new Ribble fork. So go ahead and loosen up the headset bolts. Sorry, not the headset. This is the stem bolts. It's on top of the headset. I have 4mm and 5mm. Drop that out, and then also I'm going to loosen the front brake cable and take the front brake off as well. Okay, so here's the crown race from the standard BMC, and this is the tapered. I'm not sure how easy it is to see, but 1 1/8 and 1 1/4 on the bottom. And this again is not the recommended way to remove a crown race, but I'm going to go ahead and tap a little bit first with this to see if I can get a little bit of leverage underneath the crown race, and then flip it over and work my way around it before I use a chisel very easily around it. Again, this is not the preferred method to do it, so only do this at your own risk. Alright, so I got a little bit in to wedge it in, and from this point I'm going to kind of make my way around and try to get it wedged underneath the other portions of the crown race and the fork. Again, this is not the preferred method, but I'm going to go ahead and keep working around. And get some space under there, as you can see. And then from there, I have this to go ahead and get a little more, to try to start lifting it up just a little bit. So now that I use the little putty knife to get a little bit of space around underneath the crown race, I'm going to go ahead and use that chisel. Again, it's not the recommended way to remove a crown race, so again, can't emphasize this enough to try this method only at your own risk. Now with the chisel portion, go ahead and put the chisel, line it up underneath, just give it a few taps. And then go ahead and turn it around and give it a few taps on the other side. And then make your way all the way around on every side of the fork. Don't hit it too hard. You don't want to be damaging the fork or the crown race. As you can tell, after I do this quite a bit, you may notice that the crown race is slowly but surely coming out. So as you can see, there's more of a gap now, and as you make your way around, the crown race is slowly coming out. Now that I got the crown race a little further out, I've just been using a little screwdriver and just kind of tapping on each side just slowly, and flipping it around, tapping again, and slowly but surely coming out, but just a few millimeters at a time. Again, this Cane Creek Crown Race is about 32.75 millimeters. The one that came off my BMC is a little over 33 millimeters. Here's another one, depending on where it is. I'm not sure if this one would fit either. Alright, the stock BMC Crown Race. I got it on, but unfortunately, here's one of my learning lessons, is after I pressed it onto the fork, it had cracked. So maybe I need to contact Ribble and see if they have a specific Crown Race for their forks, because it's actually a little bit wider than the standard 1¼ inch forks. Another thing to note is on the standard BMC fork, this Cane Creek Crown Race just doesn't fit either. So I'm not sure. It's real tight. If I were to kind of press it back on, it might also crack too, or it might even damage the fork. So I don't want to damage my fork, so I'm not going to try to press it on like I did on my other fork. Okay, so the next step I'm going to take here is to go ahead and install the TRP Spyre disc brake caliper. And when I'm installing this with this 4mm Allen wrench, I'm not going to tighten it all the way down because it's going to move left and right here, and that's going to be your adjustment. So if it moves slightly left and right, that's how it gets mounted onto the fork, depending on how you want the adjustment. So that the rotor's here, you can move it to the left. If it's over here, you can move it to the right just a little bit. So the next step I'm going to do is go ahead and clean out the top here. It's kind of dirty. And I'm going to clean out the bottom. The headset, since it was integrated, just kind of fell right out. You can see it's kind of black and real dirty. So I'm going to clean this out and put some new grease in there. And I'm just going to use the Shimano grease. Put some on my finger and just go ahead and get some grease in there on the top. And grease it up on the bottom. And then I'll go ahead and put the headset, integrated headset, right on back in. I'll get a close-up of that so you can see the headset and the components. Alright, here's the pieces of the Cane Creek S110 headset. There's the top cap. There's a gold ring that goes on top of the top portion of the headset. There's the upper bearing. So all of these on the left side come as, if you order it, is together, and then if you order the lower, you order it separately. And then I also have FSA top cap along with some spacers. There's a spacer there, and there's also a 1 1/8 inch spacer along with some extra spacers. So one thing to note is which way it fits. There's this way or this, and you can tell it's kind of rounded here, and the inside's also rounded, so go ahead and put the rounded section in there. Next you can put the top cap on, or the upper portion, along with this gold thing that'll go there last. The lower bottom bracket here is just going to go ahead and slide it over the top, and it just sits right there. So now with that installed, you could go ahead and make sure that the handlebar is out of the way, and then go ahead and slide the fork through. And this top part's a little tricky. You have to kind of press it down to get it on. It looks like it sits in there fairly well because this part's so tight. And then you put the little gold washer over so it fits like so. Then you're going to go ahead and put some spacers in. And also, after this, you still have to put in the top cap. You could reuse the old top cap, or you could go ahead and get a new one. So I do have the new one. Let me get all my spacers out. And notice where this top cap sits up here. So we're taking a look at where this FSA top cap sits. You're going to have a 5mm, and a 6mm. So this 5mm, as you see it, well, if you loosen it, it falls out. So as you tighten the 5mm, it pushes up on this and pushes outward on the inside of the fork. And then the 6mm, it tightens this black part down and pulls it closer to this area. So now you can go ahead and stick on your spacers, however many you like. I'm not sure how many I need. Then you're going to go ahead and put your fork on while holding the bottom. Make sure the fork still fits over, and if it doesn't fit all the way down, so there's no fork sticking out the top here, then I need to take some spacers out. So for me, this is almost ideally how it should look. You need a little spacer, and then you need to put a spacer on the top. So that's not enough on the top. Maybe go with a little slightly larger one. I have one, so that it covers it a little bit. Now we can go ahead and drop this top cap in, tighten it down with the 5mm, get that one in semi-tight and snug, because we want this in snug before we tighten the stem. And the 6mm here is used to kind of push the two together. And once you clamp that down a little bit, then we could go ahead and tighten the stem. Now that this is tightened down, you could go ahead and use, for my stem, it's 4mm, and go ahead and evenly tighten them down on each side. So you want to make sure you follow the torque spec outlined by the manufacturer on the bolt so you don't over tighten them. So I still have my brake installed, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And I also don't have a front brake mount here because it's specifically discs, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my front brake. The next step here is to remove the bar tape. And this is the left side, because here in the US we use the left side brake for the front brake, and the right is for the rear. So I think in other countries, maybe on United Kingdom, maybe even Japan, that drive on the other side of the road, it may be a little different. So go ahead and take off the appropriate side of your bar tape, and go ahead to proceed to the next step, which will be to get a longer cable in there. Also, underneath my bar tape, I have electrical tape holding down the brake cable, so I'm going to remove the electrical tape here around the sides also. Then my brake cable will be ready to be replaced. The easy way to measure out how long you need for this brake cable, since it's going to be quite a bit longer, instead of having the brake just come to here, and this was also a bit shorter, is kind of put it over here and use the existing cable. Say, alright, I need to go from here, from the inside, and wrap this here. It needs to go up through the top. Probably bar tape will be wrapped to about here. It needs to create some bend and then go into here. So I'm going to say maybe just as long as this housing plus the extra cable on the end. So you could just go ahead and measure that and say that's like 1, 2, about 2.5 inches. So go ahead and just pull the housing right on out. To remove the brake cable right here, just go ahead and push it through the other direction, and then you can just go ahead and pull it out. Okay, so I have the old brake cable here, or the housing, not the cable, this is the housing. And then go ahead and line it all the way up with the new housing. And then it goes to here, and I want to add about 2.5 inches. So I go 1, 2, and that's 3, so half should be about right here. And then with your cable cutters, make sure your fingers are out of the way. And then go ahead and cut your new housing. So I'm not planning on reusing this old brake cable, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and use this cable. So right now it's actually a little tight in here. it doesn't go in and out easily. So after I put it in, I'm going to use this area and just kind of bend it around to try to loosen this area out because the cut isn't perfect. Now that I have my new brake cable, keep track of which area or which side the cable is. So this side is for road and the other side is for mountain bike. If you buy, I believe, Shimano road or mountain cable, they come specific. So this side would be for mountain and this is for road bike side. So you could go ahead, unwind it, and cut this side off if you're using it for road bike. So go ahead and take the cable out. We know this side right here is for road bike end, that we don't need the other side. So go ahead and take this out, use your cable cutters, and find the opposite side that you don't need, and you can go ahead and trim that side off. Nowadays, most mountain bikes are on the hydraulic disc brakes with fluids, and that's the mechanical disc brake side. And go ahead and give that a little trim off. To install the brake cable, go ahead, it might be hard to see, line this up here, and there is a hole back there, and you have to just kind of fish it through and see if you could get that cable right into the hole. You might have to bend it down just a little bit and go from the front end and try to get it through to the rear. So this might take a little while for me to fish it through here. So the secret there was just to put a little bend here in the cable, and I have my new brake cable housing. Go ahead and put that in. I should be able to slide right in. If not real easily, then just put it in the other side. Slide this off. Pull the cable all the way through. And continue sliding the brake cable housing all the way through. So now that you have this in here, go ahead and start tightening this up by pulling this area here, making sure it's nice and tight, and pushing that inside. And then from here, figure out if you want this to go on the inside like how I had it earlier. And if you do, go ahead and start wrapping some tape around to tighten this and to apply that to the inside of the bar. And we have one more here. And then you go ahead and tighten this on here. This portion is going to go underneath my computer mount. Now where you insert it into the fork, this one already has a kind of a guide. Let's see if it goes through this guide or not. I don't know if it goes through the guide. You might have to type it. Can I tape it to the guide and pull it through? Maybe. Let's try that. Alright, so there's a little hose here. Let's see if I can tape it to it and guide it through. No idea if it's going to work or not, but we'll see. Let's see if it fits in here. Oh, it's not coming out the other side. But fortunately there's a little Allen screw. Ooh, barely made it out. And I could just fish it through. Alright, so another learning lesson here. This came out of the fork on the bottom side, and this is the housing. It fits straight through. So apparently you have to know if your fork takes the housing inside all the way through the fork. I thought you'd have housing end at one area, you have bare cable through the fork, and then housing again from the top of the fork. But apparently the housing runs all the way through, so I miscut my housing and I have to find another length of housing and recut it. So fortunately I didn't cut the brake cable yet, and now I'm going to say, okay, I want about this much bend up top and I'm going to want my cable to go all the way down through here, and let's say I want it to end the route right here, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this area, and I got to add that much more length to this housing so I can pull it all the way through. Uh-oh, it's getting stuck. Let's try that again. Alright, this little tape thing's not working too well, so hopefully I could just kind of fold it a little bit and bend this and see how much more length I need. To come up through here, it looks like 27 centimeters. Yep, I think so, about 27 centimeters to add to the length of the brake cable. Alright, so I got some housing that was 27 centimeters longer, and I went ahead and attached it to the brake, and now I'm just going to go ahead and rewrap my bar tape. I'll go ahead and get some new bar tape later. I know this is kind of old looking, but I just want to put it back together so I can get out to see, to finish this video up and to take it out for a little ride to see how it works out. Alright, coming down to the final few steps now. Have to go ahead and install the disc brake front wheel and go ahead and put in the 12mm through axle in. So disc wheels, you know the disc is on the left side, and make sure you line it up correctly. Slide it down, and go ahead, put the through axle in, give it a few good turns by hand, and for this one, need a 6mm Allen wrench, and go ahead and tighten this one down a bit. And right now you can see it's rubbing, so we have to go ahead and adjust the front brake. In order to do that, I think I need those 4 or 5mm Allen wrench. So as you can see here, it has a little bit of rub, and depending on where this is, you don't really want the rub. So if it's left or right, that's how the adjustments go. Now to adjust this, go ahead and grab the brake, and then go ahead and tighten down on these bolts back and forth slowly. So here's a close look at the two mounting bolts there in black. I'm going to go ahead, squeeze the brake here, and as you can tell, if I let go, there's still a little bit of rub. So go ahead and apply the brakes and start tightening down each of the bolts, just back and forth, and do a little bit at a time with the same amount of torque each time. So if, let's say, I'm applying half a Newton meter, and apply half Newton meter to the bottom, then another little bit more to the top, and just keep making your way back and forth. When you let go, it rubs again, and you have to redo it again. Okay, so here's another learning lesson that I learned while I'm tightening these. Right here you can see that this says 3mm pad in, and there is a directional clockwise to tighten it. Now what you have to do on both sides is use this 3mm, stick it in here and loosen both sides. There's one here and one also on the back side to pull the pads apart. Then also another learning lesson is this housing right here. Make sure this housing's all the way in. If it's just a millimeter or two out, every time you pull it in, this thing would also move a little bit. So you got to make sure the housing's on real tight. Then go ahead, pull the brake cable, tighten both top and bottom evenly. I don't think I've tightened them all the way down yet. Just want to see how it works. I'm still in the process of, I'm still tightening them down. While you're holding the brake cable, continue to tighten them down, up and down, the top and the bottom, until you get it to the required torque spec. Then you let go, and it should work out just fine. Well, there you have it. That's how you install a disc brake on the front of your road bike. Again, you do need a new fork, new disc calipers, maybe a rotor, a whole new wheel with a hub that accommodates disc brake. You could go with cable actuated brakes so that you don't need to change out your shifter to a hydraulic one. I don't know of any shifter combinations you could buy that has hydraulic and mechanical in the rear if that's what you choose. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video hopefully. Thanks.